Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Look at Papo and Yo, although you might not know it from looking at the title screen because there is no title here. This is Papo and Yo. This originally came out for PS3 via PSN last summer, I believe. It was probably like last August, last September maybe, if I remember correctly. But it is now available on Steam for the same price that it was on PSN, 15 bucks. So what is this? This is a puzzle platformer where you inhabit the role of a child affected by abuse, shall we say. I'm not going to talk too much about the narrative elements of the game because I am only about an hour and 15 minutes in so far. From a gameplay perspective, though, this is much more relatable, I think, for everybody. It's a puzzle platformer, largely focused around physics, jumping, and, you know, hitting switches and buttons in order to open up paths to progress. Let's start a new game here. Because as with most puzzle platformers that I cover, I prefer to do things, or puzzles that I've already handled, just to make sure that I'm not going to get completely stuck in the middle of the game. And I should point out, by the way, that as we watch this opening cutscene, so far the themes of abuse are definitely prevalent here. Keep in mind that, of course, the monster is, not to get too ham-fisted here, but the monster is probably meant to be, you know, an analogy for the boy's father here. So we're playing as this young South American child here named, I believe, Kiko. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And basically, he is going to escape via this cutscene into his dream world. And the reason I don't want to talk too much more about the narrative is because obviously it is a sensitive subject, and I don't necessarily want to do it ill service by talking about it too much. That, and again, I haven't finished the game yet, so I have no idea where things go and how they progress. But I have heard from a lot of people that have finished the game that if you have a history of experience with abuse, either, you know, firsthand or secondhand, and it's a much more relatable and affecting narrative than perhaps it is if you have not been affected by it. So we are going to load into our game here, and then we'll get into the gameplay. I really am having a good time with Papo and Yo so far. I know this game was kind of divided critics upon release. I think I saw a lot of great reviews, or a lot of good reviews at least, and also a lot of reviews that considered this to be pretty bad. But I've had a really good time with Papo and Yo so far. In terms of puzzle platformers, it's one of the more unique ones I've played in a while. Even though it's a little bit on the easy side so far, I've had a really good time with it so far. And if you're into puzzle platformers, I would absolutely recommend it. At least, again, based on my first impressions experience so far. So we're going to be chasing down this lady here, or this girl, perhaps to be more accurate, who may or may not be our sister. I haven't gotten far enough in the game to tell if that is ever going to be 100% revealed so far. So, playing as Kiko, we have a few abilities here. We can jump, obviously. We will have a double jump later, and we'll probably play through to at least until we get the double jump, which might be like 20 minutes to a half hour in. We also have the ability to kind of control these weird graffiti elements here. So if I'd press the X button on my Xbox 360 controller, because that is indeed what I'm using to control the game, we can actually pull on these switches and interact with these kind of chalk objects. And by interacting with these, I wonder if, no, I can't get over there just yet. By interacting with these, we can manipulate our environment in such a way that we can progress throughout the game, essentially. So, you know, if you played puzzle platformers before, you're probably familiar with how this works. On a, you know, if we're going to compare it to recent games that I've taken a look at, this is most similar in structure, I guess, to something like Pulse, you know, the blindness game where you throw the creatures around to get echolocation, but obviously it's only similar in the kind of way, the pathing that you use to get from point A to point B. So we do have these hint boxes. This one is just going to explain stuff about the game. This hint box is actually super meta. It just explains what hint boxes are. And we can walk around like Solid Snake here if we wanted to for a little bit longer, but we'll just put this back down on the ground because we can't do too much with that, to be quite honest with you. So I have to say that I actually find the game really, I wouldn't necessarily say visually striking, but very visually pleasant. My major positive element of Papo and Yo that I can say so far, again, most people say the narrative, but I'm not far enough in to really give an honest critique on that, or a valid critique at least. My main positive, the main thing that it keeps me coming back to this game, or kept me in it for as long as I played during my first play session, is that the world is just really pleasant to inhabit. Everything looks really nice. I mean, it's not the most visually impressive game that I've ever seen in my entire life, but it is kind of visually striking, I guess, to a certain extent. And the music in particular does a really good job of setting this atmosphere. Again, I'm not going to hazard a guess as to where this takes place, except to say that it is, you know, probably in some South American country, if I had to guess. But that is all that I will say. But the music in particular, I think, does a very good job of setting the atmosphere for the game, and just making it, as I said, a very pleasant world to kind of be involved in. It's a very, so far, kind of an almost ambient experience of a game. It's certainly not on the same level as a Proteus or something like that, you know, a game where the only gameplay is walking around. But the gameplay is certainly secondary, I guess, to the kind of feeling that the developers are trying to evoke here, I suppose. But anyway, we're going to continue moving onwards here. One of the major complaints that I've seen about this game from some critical press that came out around the time that the PS3 version came out is that the puzzles are a little bit too easy. And to be quite honest with you, I can't necessarily disagree with them there. Most of these puzzles, at least in the early game, do boil down to, you know, hit switch A, which will, you know, activate another piece of chalk graffiti across the level, and then if you hit lever B that was activated by switch A, then you'll open a gate that'll get to the exit. This being said, I don't necessarily think this is a shocking negative. The other complaint that happens now and then is kind of technical glitches, and I can say that those are definitely present in the game. I heard the PS3 version was worse, and they've been ironed out a little bit on the PC version. But I've run into some frame rate issues. I've run into some, you know, Kiko will kind of fall through a ledge. And you know, it's one of those games where, you know, coming from something like, I don't know, Crackdown, if we're gonna go back 6 years, if you can see it, you can get to it, is definitely not the principle that is being adhered to here. It's definitely more of a kind of like a linear game with kind of this big open world environment superficially added. It makes for something that's visually interesting, but, you know, just because you can see something like that big tower there doesn't necessarily mean you can go to it, at least as far as I can tell. So that lady is there. We're going to hit this switch. Again, keep in mind, all of my comments here are based on not too much play. I have only played, again, about a little over an hour at this point so far. So, you know, it's possible the puzzles may get more difficult. I'm, generally speaking, pretty bad at puzzle platformers, as you will know if you are a longtime fan of the channel. And I have not gotten stuck here for more than, you know, 30 or 40 seconds, really. The frame rate issues are a bigger frustration, but that usually only happens when we enter a new area. It's not like a chugging, it just like stays slow for longer than I would like, shall we say. So this is almost like the tutorial act. This is going to encounter all of Act 1, but later in the game, we are going to get some powers that are going to change our abilities. So we're going to get some accessories that'll help us out. We can't follow her through that door. But yeah, we'll get a toy robot that will help us do kind of a double jump, and it will allow us to hit switches across the map, and we'll be interacting with the monster, who is, I guess, the primary antagonist of this game, but he's not a traditional antagonist, at least, again, not so far. He's much more of a, I don't know, it's kind of an ambiguous nature, or, he's got positives and negatives. He helps us and hurts us, shall we say. So, again, I saw, in particular, I'm talking about IGN's review of this. I saw IGN gave this a 4 out of 10, and it's irresponsible of me to say that that is crazy, but I do feel, I mean, because obviously they assumedly played through the entire game, not to get on the IGN anti-circle jerk, but I saw in the review that they said the game was visually kind of unimpressive or unimaginative, and, you know, looking at stuff like this, when I first saw this in the game, I was like, this is really fucking cool. We've almost got like an Inception-style ability to control our world here. So I definitely feel like that criticism of the game being visually unimaginative just kind of, I don't know. For me, it falls on deaf ears. I think they're absolutely misguided with that. It might, you know, it's still, everything is a little bit drab and gray and brown, but I don't know, it kind of makes for, when there are vivid colors, or, you know, things that are really only possible within the imagination of this child, it makes it interesting, I think. The stark difference between the kind of realistic-ish looking environments and the otherworldly supernatural stuff that we can also accomplish by way of the powers that we have, because we're basically inside of, like, a lucid dream right now. But yeah, not to harp on IGN, because again, you know, they presumably played through the entire game, and they're not the only people that, when this game came out, gave it a low score. I saw a lot of people saying that they enjoyed it a great deal, and a lot of people saying that, you know, maybe from a narrative element, or a narrative standpoint, it's cool, but from a gameplay and technical aspect, it has its fair share of problems. So, you know, there's people on both sides of that issue, shall we say. So, we have again solved this puzzle, and we will push this elevator upwards. The reason I keep bringing back the critical press, which might seem a little bit unusual for me, because normally I try to review these things, or, you know, take a look at these things as a standalone critic myself, but is to kind of temper everything that I say with kind of the expectation that this is a love it or hate it kind of game in the perhaps most literal sense of the word. I'm gonna go on record right now saying I have very positive impressions of Papo and Yo. I've been talking to Nick and Omrecker, Rocket League Smile and Omrecker. They both have very positive impressions of Papo and Yo, but we might be in the minority there. So, you know, keep in mind when considering perhaps purchasing this based on our recommendations that this is not a universally beloved game, but it is a game that I feel has a lot of character. Like, I don't know, again, visually unimaginative. This does not strike me as visually unimaginative. when we, you know, turn the switches on these houses and watch them kind of skitter away as if they were a cockroach or something. But, again, different strokes for different folks, I suppose. So, again, the criticism that the game's puzzles are kind of just go point A, point B, hit the X button, and then watch things kind of happen. To a certain extent, I do believe that that is valid, but again, I'm not too far into the game. In terms of the length of the game, I'm actually not sure how long it goes on for. You know, traditionally, when games are divided into acts, they usually have 4 or 5 acts, I guess similar to a play. I am on Act 2. I'm not sure how far I am into Act 2 after about an hour and a little bit of play. So not to spoil this puzzle for us, because we're just doing it right now, but basically, there is a pressure-activated switch, and when I hit that switch, it'll open this gate at the end. But I needed to get more houses kind of in the area in order to... or more houses to make a path, I guess you could say, in order to get there. So I had to get those other ones over there, and now we should have enough, assuming these all form a path for us. So yeah, I think it looks very inventive. And, you know, even though it's just kind of a superficial masking of, you know, hit switch X and then walk through door Y, I appreciate that nonetheless. Like I said, I played a lot of puzzle platformers. Most of them, admittedly, are, you know, 2D side-scrolling puzzle platformers and primarily physics-based puzzle platformers. But at the same time, I feel like that makes me a little bit qualified to talk about how I feel about Papo and Yo so far. Within the context of other puzzle platformers, and I really feel like this is one of the more engaging puzzle platformers I've played, you know, in the last 2 years, maybe in the entire lifespan of my channel. The puzzles are not, shall I say, not to get, again, circle jerky, but braid level of ingenious, but I don't necessarily think they have to be for this to be a worthwhile game. This is a game that kind of survives on its visual neatness, the kind of not imaginative in the same sense that I've been using it so far, but the fact that we're inside of this dream world, so that, you know, the child's imagination is what allows these kind of supernatural shifts in geography, and I don't know, just the atmosphere, and I guess perhaps also the thematic or narrative elements, if they are relevant to you. Not to say that, of course, if they're not relevant to you, then there's nothing to gain from this here, but, you know, I'm not one of those people that values story or narrative over gameplay. Like, for me, for the most part, gameplay is king, so when I talk about a game that is largely considered to be narratively better than it is from a gameplay perspective, and I still compliment it, don't think that I'm just being like, oh, this is a majestic tale, and even though the gameplay is kind of boring, then it doesn't matter because it's an uplifting story or something like that, or an inspired story. That's not the case here, because I haven't gotten far enough in to necessarily say anything, again, valid about the narrative, but from a gameplay standpoint, I'm having a lot of fun with this so far, and again, I can't stress enough, I use the term meditative probably too much, and this is not necessarily a meditative game, but it's just a pleasant environment to kind of inhabit. I have a very fun time playing the game, just because it's sort of relaxing to kind of exist in this world. So we have, this might be the end of Act 1, I'm not totally sure where the act break happens, but this is the end of us chasing that girl, at least for the time being, and we will get another brief kind of story element here. So I am controlling this character during this cutscene. Just keep in mind, again, that the story is never explicitly stated, you know, like the opening cutscene of an RPG might be or something. Thousands of years ago, Person X fought Person Y over the Kingdom of Fire. It's not really like that. It's more of it's told tangentially, if you will, or it's told organically, if you will, and you can kind of infer from these situations what may or may not be happening by filling in perhaps your own personal interpretations. In any case, though, after this white screen disappears, we should be playing some more gameplay here in Papo and Yo. And we've taken the elevator back up, so I guess that was just the elevator down to the cutscene. And I believe this is where we will get access to one of our abilities. Again, graphically, I don't think the game looks fantastic, but I think it looks pretty good. It's definitely not in terms of like art style, I think it's unique. That's like its strongest point, but in terms of even just its technical prowess from a graphical level, I think it looks totally fine. So this is Lula, I believe, if I can remember his name properly. And we have a changed outfit here. But what Lula will allow us to do once we actually capture him, or, you know, get him on our side, shall I say, which should happen in like 2 seconds here if it hasn't happened already, is he'll allow us to double jump, and he'll also open up the ability for us to access and activate switches that are a little bit distant on the level. So if I could just get him over here. I'm not going to these hint boxes, by the way, because there's just kind of no point to it, unless I'm missing something here, and for some reason he won't go for us. Okay, I'm supposed to be able to double jump. Lula! Help me out. Maybe I can pick him up. Yeah, okay, we can pick him up with the X button there. Okay. So now just by double tapping the A button. Again, I'm not sure what this controls with on PC. I can't imagine this controlling badly on PC. I assume you just use the mouse for the camera. And, you know, spacebar for jump, WASD to move around. But I can't say that with authority, because whenever it comes to platformers, especially 3D stuff, I like to use my controller because, A, that's what I grew up with, but B, the right analog stick is an excellent way, in my opinion, to control the camera. So, we're going to send Lula over here. We got like a press Y to Lula button in this game, almost like a press X to Sean or Jason or something like that. So even when we are not near a switch, we can just, well, we are near a switch here, so this is not a good example, but even when you're not near a switch, you can just press Y to Lula, which is a nice way to get a little bit of an echo in this cold and distant world. If you're lonely, just press Y to Lula. It's almost as if you're talking to somebody. I haven't talked too much about my thought process going through these puzzles, because quite honestly, again, the puzzles are easy. That's something you should know getting into this, is that this is not a space chem. This is not a game where you are going to be, like, really up against it with respect to how difficult the puzzles are. This is much more of a game. It is, you know, to, I guess, defend that IGN review to a certain extent, and I'm sure there's other reviews like it, not to harp on IGN, but, you know, it's about getting from point A to point B, and the puzzles are not a major obstacle in the way of that, essentially. The puzzles are just kind of something to do to give it some, I guess, engagement or some gameplay even, to kind of allow you to navigate this interesting world. There's people who are into that, there's people who are not into that, and then there's probably a large swath of the population of people like myself who, you know, it depends on the game. If the game works really well, then it's fun. If it doesn't, then it could be boring. I have not been bored with Papo and Yo so far. I really enjoyed the time that I've spent in this world so far. So I'm not sure how much more I am going to play here, because I'm hesitant to spoil too much of either the, you know, the puzzles in the game, because obviously that's what a puzzle platformer thrives on most of the time, even despite what I just said. But the narrative as well, of course, I don't want to necessarily get to a cutscene that reveals something major. Instead, we'll just kind of continue playing for a little bit longer, and then maybe we will cut it short as we move throughout here. Again, I've got about an hour invested in the game so far, to be quite honest with you. Well, I guess we're definitely over an hour and a half now with the 18 minutes of this video. To be quite honest with you, it hasn't gone much faster in this video than it had, or than it did when I was playing it blind. I mean, I've been able to streamline a little bit of this, but this is definitely a game where you're not going to be stuck, I think. If I don't get stuck, then I feel fairly confident in saying it's unlikely that you are going to get stuck either, because again, I am, you know, historically substantially worse than the average member of the population when it comes to puzzles. So, I feel like this is definitely the kind of thing, at least so far, if the difficulty in the puzzles doesn't change, that you could make a lot of progress in a few hours. I'm not necessarily going to say you could finish the game in a few hours, because again, that would be irresponsible, not knowing exactly how long the game is. Now, inevitably, you know, this is $15 on Steam. Depending on your situation, that could be considered either affordable or perhaps on the more premium end of the indie cycle, or indie price points, I guess you could say. Because normally, you know, there's $5, $15, and $10 smack dab in the middle. For what it's worth, I usually prefer not to split hairs over the $5 difference, whether this is a $10 or $15 game. Considering this was $15 on PSN, and, you know, would probably be a similar cost on XBLA if it existed there, I feel like $15 for the Steam sale, or for the Steam release, is totally fair. And the other thing I was going to say, the reason I kind of had that Freudian slip about Steam sale, is because now that it's out on Steam, you know, it's much more likely to show up in a Steam sale. Although, I will say, you know, there's always the chance that it shows up in PS Plus or something like that for absolutely free. So we are being introduced to the monster here. In terms of the differences between the PSN version and the PC version, all I've heard, and again, this is secondhand knowledge, so take it with a grain of salt, but all I've heard is that the PC version has a few less technical glitches and bugs and stuff like that. So, you know, if that is the kind of thing that is important to you, and if you prefer playing games on your PC, it seems like this might be the definitive version to pick up, shall we say. So again, we won't play too much more, because I'm wary about spoiling some of this, but we are going to be introduced to the monster. The monster is both an adversarial and a necessary cooperative element. He is... I've never been killed by the monster, as you might expect that you would be, but he has gotten in my way a few times. But we also need him to progress. He's going to serve as both like a trampoline that we can use to bounce over obstacles. He's going to break down some barriers for us, I think. Anyway, we have a very simple puzzle here, which should not take us too long to complete. we are just going to activate these switches. I think we want to put one here. Again, not to overly quicken the speed at which we are going to finish this. We want to put one here, and then we'll take this one over here, and this should allow us to get this third one, but then our lady friend is going to come back. I think if I had to guess, my guess would be that she represents your sister, maybe, in this story of potentially paternal abuse. But again, that is all speculation on my end there. So we are going to put this block down here. And by putting this block down here, we will create a sort of jumping puzzle that we can use in order to access that other area. And she's going to take our third block, which means we can't just get straight to the exit here, as you can tell. But to spoil this is probably the most difficult puzzle I've had so far, which is not saying a whole lot, because it is an easy puzzle for sure. But we will land on this, and then we will take our elevator up here, and we'll grab this switch, pull it backwards, and that will trap her in here. And she will decide, you know what, fuck this, it's not worth going to jail for, so she will just drop the block. And we'll be able to use that to get to the monster. I might as well show at least like one section of the monster gameplay, because my guess is that you're probably going to be dealing with the monster for a lot of the rest of the game, so it would be kind of ignorant of me, deliberately ignorant, in fact, for me to not show off what might be gameplay that's representative of like the entire rest of the game, potentially. So this is just a very simple jumping puzzle. I haven't had very much trouble with these so far. If you die, you just respawn with a very, very short loading time where you previously were. So, you know, death is a mere nuisance, shall we say, not a huge obstacle. I had big frame rate issues with this area the first time I loaded in, but hopefully those are not going to be endemic to this area as a whole. And as we get down here, we will be able to interact with the monster for the first time, and we'll do one quick section of these, and then it will be time to probably call it quits for the Papo and Yo Let's Look At. I know people always ask for Let's Plays, and that's totally fine, but I'm definitely not going to do a Let's Play of Papo and Yo, because again, I feel like that would be doing the game a disservice. I think this is probably, and again, this is just secondhand reading of press on the game, but also my personal hunch is that this is probably a pretty personal experience, so I think if you're interested in the game, you should probably play through it for yourself, rather than use me as a conduit for that. In any case, I do appreciate the request, of course. We're just gonna hang out on the dude's stomach here, and if we turn backwards, we can actually bounce, and that should allow us to bounce through the window. And then we'll get introduced to this coconut mechanic, which I'll go over very briefly before we finish out the game here. So I believe this will open, if we pull on this rope, this will open the doors here. I really like how the pages, or they kind of turn like pages when they get to the end. As if it's not really made out of stone, but instead made out of paper. Again, things that are otherwise impossible in the real world, totally possible in Kiko's world, because we're in his imagination right now. So the monster is two things. It's sleepy and it's hungry. So what we have to do is convince it to come over here and step on this platform, which will basically act as a switch, allowing us to get across this bridge. So we have to kind of lead him, lead the monster, if you will, over here by using these coconuts. His hunger prevails over his sleep. Are you kidding? Okay, he did wake up there. Where is the other coconut? The coconuts respawn after kind of a set amount of time. You can throw them or place them. I've actually had some trouble with the coconut puzzles so far. Dude, there's a coconut right out here. I've already got one placed on the switch. Maybe I'll just, okay, we've got another one right here. Maybe I'll set up a path for him like this. Oh, there's another switch over here, actually. I think. No, it's not. Okay, that's just kind of environmental. I need one more coconut. I realize there's a coconut on the switch right now. Actually, what I could do, I think, is just, you know, do things the old-fashioned way. I did this a different way the first time, I believe. I just kind of hung out, or I threw like a wave of coconuts, or a line of coconuts, if you will, that coerced him into walking on this. But I think what we actually just want to do, assuming he's still following me, which he is, just put coconuts down here. This will unravel the bridge, and that'll be good to go for us. In any case, I think this is where I'm going to stop playing Papo and Yo, at least on video, but I'm looking forward to spending more time with this in my downtime. This is Papo and Yo. It's available now on PSN as well as the PC via Steam for 15 bucks. There will be a link in the video description to the store page of the Steam page, or the Steam release if you're interested in picking it up. You know, 15 bucks, a little expensive for some people, I'm sure, but I'm having a really good time with Papo and Yo. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Tiny and Big in Grandpa's Leftovers. I can't remember how much that retailed for when it originally came out, but in any case, you know, it's going to be a personal choice, I guess, whether you want to pick this up. I would recommend it. I give it a thumbs up. It's certainly not a must-buy universally at its current price, but it's one of the more inventive games, I would say, that I've played in a long time. One of the most pleasant 3D puzzle platformers I've played in a long time, and I believe it has the potential to be a deeply affecting personal experience. But again, secondhand knowledge, so maybe I'm just being a total poser there. In any case, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for your support as always, and I will see you next time.